welcome to What Haunts You, a podcast about the stories that haunt our dreams. I'm Carly.
And I'm Katie. If you like what you hear, please click the bell so you'll be notified for our next episode on Spotify. To also come find us on Instagram at What Haunts You Pod and tell us what spooky movies and stories you're watching, listening to, reading, and if you want us to talk about them.
So we broke this episode into two parts just to make it a little bit easier. We got to a good stopping point and had to start recording, and I think sometimes it's easier than trying to pretend it's a seamless jump back in.
I was laughing listening back that it took us even longer to get to the title screen than it took the movie, because I think it was like a full half hour into the movie the title screen shows up, and it was like 47 minutes for us. But I mean, we were talking about other things. It's not like it was just a straight story, but still, it's a long intro.
Yeah, and there's so much good stuff to comment on in those first sequences of the movie, like the date and stuff is just rife with jokes to make, criticisms to make, all of the things.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm like really all over the place with how I take notes, but I took a lot of plot notes on this one, so I think that I still have a lot to say. All right, let's get into Fresh Part 2.
Yes, and we ended up with her getting made into a literal piece.
Yes, she got her butt cut off, and I was like immediately like, how is she gonna sit? How is she gonna like go to the bathroom? I kind of was like, which part of the butt is it? Like, how close to her butthole did he take off? But I don't know. I mean, I assume it's like the gluteus maximus is like the most edible part.
I also will say that like my biggest like nitpick of this movie is that you could tell she had a butt.
I know.
Like in the date scenes, I was kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they would have done any different, I guess.
They could have just avoided filming her from behind or the side, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that seemed like a pretty significant error on their part, and it did bother me. Not enough to ruin the movie. Like, I still really enjoyed the movie, but I was really aware of that.
So I think like right after the surgery scene, it goes to Molly going to the bartender where Steve and Noah had like their first date. And Molly, we like get a teeny bit of backstory that Molly has like some past romantic history with this guy, and she's like kind of being a little flirty to try to get information, but she also kind of like avoided going to see him for a little bit because of that. But now she's starting to like really worry about Noah, and she asks for the credit card info so she can get his last name. And the bartender says, "Isn't she white? Why don't you just go to the police?" Which, like, fair, actually. And I think she still probably would have needed to get his name, but she avoids going to the police, which makes sense to me, but also like she puts herself in some pretty risky situations, and we'll get to that further. But then the next bit in my notes says Noah eats some ass gone. But I think that she was like sitting while she was eating, and that's where I was like, how is she sitting? And I know she says that she is on pain meds, and that's making her not care as much. And then I also wrote, I want to hurt him. It's all I think about. And I don't know. I think that's a quote, but I'm not sure who said that. I think either Penny or Noah. And then I think Noah asks Penny if she had slept with him. And Penny said, as far as she knew, like she hadn't, and like none of the other girls had. And Penny says,
yeah, which sets it up for Noah to be dead.
And Penny says it's not our fault, it's always theirs, which I think is also like one of the deeper meaning quotes that's like not just about this situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, because I think the whole movie is like really commentary on just like what is it like to date as a woman at this time, and so I think it's really kind of getting to that, but it's putting it in this conversation where they're both kind of losing it a little. I mean, Penny especially is losing it. She's been there longer,
and there was the other girl who had like really like there was kind of like the stages of losing it, where there's the girl who like couldn't even really talk and was just like singing to herself,
right? Yeah, which I think is really, I really think that's like a useful tool for them them in the movie too, of kind of seeing, okay, so like Noah has just gotten here, she's just kind of had her first procedure, this is how she's doing, and then we have Penny who's further down, we don't know how much further down until later, right? And then what is the other one's name? Molly? No, Molly is the friend.
I think it's Melissa.
Yeah, I knew it was an M. And then Melissa is like totally gone. Nobody can get her to like have a conversation. And I mean, and we don't actually see what's happened to Melissa, which I think is really actually quite effective, because you can, it just lets your mind really go. It really like lets you just have to sit and be like, what has been done to this person? Like, what has been taken from this person so far?
Yeah, and at the end, I'm jumping ahead, spoiler. I guess we're always spoiling everything, but pre-spoiler before the spoiler. And we, like, when they eventually escape, Molly, Noah, and Penny escape, but Melissa, I think they like can't get her out, or she's dead already. I don't remember.
I think she was dead already.
But I think she like wouldn't come with them.
I think she was dead already, but I'm not sure if I'm remembering now.
Maybe. It's probably in my notes. But anyways, then Molly gets dude's name, and it's Brendan Stephen Kemp, so he's been using his middle name. And I think she finds him on Facebook through this. At least she finds his wife, who's Anne Kemp, and they have twins. And I wrote, of course, they have a blue line flag on their Facebook.
Did they? I missed that. Oh my god. That's wild. I mean, you would think that this guy wouldn't like cops, right? He's literally a serial killer. He runs like a cannibal ring.
I don't know if he can get them on his side, then I feel like it's advantageous for him to. Or even if they're not on his side, there's a lot of serial killers who have like gotten in deep with cops and been like, we're friends, so you would never suspect me.
Ed Kemper used to go to the cop bar and had to like convince the people he confessed to that he was really a murderer.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was inspired by him because their last name's Kemp.
Yeah, I didn't even put that together.
And then Molly finds Steve's house, which is a little sketchy. She's like decides to go there, and we like jump back to the girls at the house and see Noah trying to pee, and she is like in her room. There's like a toilet in the room, and she pulls down her underwear and it's all bloody on the backside, and just like imagining trying to sit and peeing without a butt, just very, very not good. And then while she's peeing, she hears Steve taking Penny, and Penny screaming, and I think that that's like kind of more affecting now that we've seen what's happened to Noah and like lived in the getting your body parts taken scene as like kind of a first person thing.
Yeah, especially knowing that Penny has already been there and has probably already had things taken. Like it's just, yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of work that your brain is doing while you're watching this movie of kind of filling in some of those gaps and like just wondering what extent this goes to, especially because he does tell her, you know, I'm going to try to keep you alive as long as I can. And that's horrifying. I mean, that's like actually I mean, obviously that is the thing that allows her to be saved, but like also that is horrifying and really makes you have to sit in the discomfort of wondering what all is being taken and how far does it really go before someone dies.
Yeah, I was wondering like how long it would take for that injury to heal. Also, like they show her sitting like way faster than makes sense to me, but also like I don't know how long. It would be like at least a month, I would think, but probably even longer. And I think especially because it's an area that moves so much that you would have to be like doing some sort of rehabilitative care to actually even be able to move your lower body normally.
Yeah, well, especially because it's like taking out a whole muscle, isn't it? Ugh, whole body shivers.
It couldn't have been the whole. I mean, yeah, this is a plot hole, basically, like you said, where they didn't show it, but it's also like it has to be like, I don't know, maybe because he's a surgeon, he knows like how much of the muscle to take so that the person will still have like usability of their lower body. But like, I don't know, it also would make sense for him to incapacitate them by taking out muscles that make it harder for them to run. Like, I mean, Penny has her leg taken,
right?
But yeah, I think it's kind of a balance between what keeps them alive longer and what parts people want to eat the most. And that, yeah, weird. Yeah. So then Noah gets a bunch of magazines, which she finds notes in the magazine that's from a past girl named Sammy. And it says, if you're reading this, it means he likes you and use it to your advantage.
Yeah, which is the first real glimmer of hope, I think.
Yeah. And we see some more flashing between Noah's face and a man opening a box with meat and panties and pictures, and I like kind of the food chain of people getting access to her meat. And then Molly's at Steve's, or Brendan Steve's house, and she sends her location to the bartender and says, in case shit goes awry, or for you to come over later.
Yeah. And I think that's it's like one of those moments of, I'm trying to make this more lighthearted than it is, and actually I'm very scared.
Yeah. Which, like, I don't know why she went there alone. Like, I don't know I think what happened is exactly what I would have expected to happen. Like, she made some poor choices, but also it makes sense cinematically.
Yeah, well, I also think that it gives a moment to, I mean, this also kind of jumps forward a little bit, but at the end when she runs back into the wife, she's like, it's women like you that let them keep doing this, or whatever she says. Right. She kind of says, like, you guys are enabling these terrible men. And I think that it gives a real moment to that dynamic of thinking that you could go to a woman, like that you, like, as a woman could go to another woman and say, hey, this is what's happening with your husband. You should know about this. You should probably be concerned about this. I'm concerned about this. And you like having that sense that will be a safe interaction, and that will be okay, and that they will be kind of like inherently on your side, because you're both women and men are men and terrible sometimes, often. And so I think that it does like let that moment play out of how do you know who to trust about anything kind of related to, and because I think like you could talk about like emotional abuse, physical abuse, like sexual assault, like all of the things that kind of happen in relationships between men and women, and that thought that you should be able to trust a woman about it, but knowing that there are women out there who you can't.
Yeah. And I think even like on a lower level, I've had multiple times where I've told women that their boyfriend was like hitting on me, or that I like knew they had cheated on them, and they've like, the person has gotten mad at me instead of at their partner, or they just like assumed I was lying.
Right, exactly. Like it's how much there are just some women who really want to buy in to whatever is being sold to them, and I think that's this is like the most extreme example of that.
Oh yeah, and then this is when we flash to while Molly's talking to the wife, and the wife's like, this sounds crazy, like this can't you, and is also like, I have no idea who you're talking about, I've never seen that girl, that's not my husband, or whatever, I don't know. And then we flash to Steve like trying to just be like super normal, casual with Noah, and that's when Noah asks what it tastes like, and I think he's like, do you really want to know? And this is like building up to how she's trying to form like more of an intimate connection with him to establish more access to safety.
Yeah, there's still a big part of me that wants to see the version of this movie where she ends up loving it and like getting involved, and it's like this weird deranged love story. Like I just like, there's a big part of me that wants to see that movie.
I want to see the prequel that is Steve first trying meat, and then also how he and his wife got together.
Yeah, there's a lot I was just gonna say there's a lot to flesh out. I wasn't really thinking about it, but there's a lot in the story, like in the kind of world the story creates, to explore. Like I think there's a lot of room for there to be a prequel, or even just a side story that's kind of tangentially related.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so I had forgotten, but the wife tells Molly that she should go to the police also. So I do think that they feel pretty safe and insulated from the police. At this point, like before Steve comes home, I am kind of like, does the wife know? It's not until later that you're like, sure she does. But like, I mean, yeah, it was like, I wasn't sure how much the wife was a part of it, and I wanted to believe that she wasn't. But like knowing that she is afterwards, and that she says, go to the police, I think they're pretty sure that nothing would happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and they're like an affluent couple, right? Like they're like,
right.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the husband comes home and the wife's like, you gotta go. And Steve's like, what's going on? And Molly is like, Steve? And he's like, I just go by Brendan. I don't know any Noah. Everything's fine. You should leave. And then Molly's like, oh, I guess I probably just have the wrong house then. And as she's walking out, she decides to call Noah's phone, which this I was like, girl, why didn't you wait until you were outside of the house? Like you would have known, and you could have maybe she gotten away versus
Yeah.
like Steve is blocking the exit to the door, wife's behind her, calls, Noah's phone rings, and I think Steve says like, you shouldn't have done that or something, and then the
Yeah.
wife knocks her out.
Yeah, like she was literally surrendered when she made that decision.
Yeah.
And it seems like she could have gotten away if she hadn't done that. It does, because when he says, you know, you shouldn't have done that, the implication in my mind is we were just going to let you leave.
Right.
And now we can't.
Yep. Then the bartender's trying to call Molly, her phone's off, and we see the wife kind of like cleaning up the house, and then she's in her bathroom and she's staring in the mirror. Another scene of characters staring in the mirror. I think this is like mostly, especially at this point, depicting people like judging themselves or questioning their choices, like really like looking at who they are and what they've done, but they all kind of just keep doing what they're doing. Yeah, anyways. And I think she's also noticing herself aging and like wondering if he's getting involved with Noah, maybe, or just like with any new girl, because she's kind of like pulling at her face, like doing like a like seeing what a facelift would look like kind of pulling.
Yeah, which I think also goes hand in hand with him when he's on his date with Noah. And like this is maybe true, maybe not true, who really knows, but he says that he's a plastic surgeon, so it also kind of makes you wonder, has he done any surgeries on her like relating to that, or like is he pressuring her in that way? You know, like I think that there's I think that plants an extra seed of like what the thing you're talking about here.
Yeah, that's true. And then she's like texting her husband and being like, are you going to be home soon? And he says he has a big delivery and says good teamwork today, like reinforcing that she did a good job by knocking out Molly.
Yeah.
And then this is when we see the wife is undressing for the shower, and we see that she's missing one of her legs below the knee. And then it cuts to a close-up of Steve's legs as he's running, which I thought that was an interesting cut.
Right.
And then
like
he's like
contrasting what other people have to sacrifice or have taken from them versus he does not.
Yeah. And he said he was going to be basically like he said he couldn't come home to his wife because he was going to be working late, but he's like very excitedly getting ready for his like quote unquote date with Noah. And this scene has like pretty similar energy to the surgery scene where there's like bright poppy music. He seems like really manic and is just kind of like butchering meat and grinding and like doing all this stuff to get the food ready, and is like just looks crazy. But also like you can tell he's really excited.
Yeah, he's really excited. He wants it to be perfect and good, and it's very interesting. And I think it's also, I'm only just now thinking about this, but I think it also speaks to like just how much money and inventory he has. I know we see the freezer, so we get like a visual cue for the inventory, but like he says that it's like a $30,000 meal or whatever as they're eating it, and it just makes you think like, what is your situation that you are able to just kind of throw that in the garbage? Because functionally that's what he's doing, right? I mean, he's feeding it to someone who he is harvesting from, and you know that's obviously not like necessary to his project. So it's just an interesting, it's like either she is so valuable to him at this point that he is like willing to make that sacrifice for her, or he is so well off and like has so much meat and has so much money that this is nothing, that this is like whatever to him.
I think it's probably some combination of both. Now I'm kind of wondering like who that murder house's name is under, like, because he seems to have worked pretty hard to put together an image of him as like a standard upper middle class suburban family man. And I think that murder house is probably hidden, like not come up under his regular name and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Yeah, I'm just so curious about how he got into this, because like during the dinner, he says that he started when he was 18 or 19 and that he was normal and like horrified at the first idea of it. And then he couldn't get the taste or texture out of his mouth and found like a whole community of people devoted to it. I wonder if it was like a cannibalism of necessity thing at first, or if it was like that he met some other weird, creepy people. But it sounds like he didn't have community around it at first and then went looking for it.
Yeah, it just also makes you wonder what like how did he go looking for it? It's making me think of the what's his name, the German guy, and like the Cannibal Cafe website. You know what I'm talking about? Armin something. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Is this the guy you were talking about last time with the foot? Or
no. This guy killed someone.
Oh no, I don't know this.
He's like, well, I don't know. You like, I guess it depends on what you think if he killed someone, but I guess he was like looking. He was looking on like what are like really probably like role play websites about cannibalism to find like an actual willing victim that he could like eat, and he found this guy who like wanted to die and wanted someone to kill him and eat him.
Wow.
And there were some more specific requests than that I don't need to get into, but but yeah, like and when you like watch anything about him or listen to anything about him, they talk about these like the Cannibal Cafe website that he would go on, but you know, he took it a little more seriously, I think, than the other people on the website did, and that actually kind of makes me wonder, like, I don't like what was his journey to finding people who were serious about it, because you could probably find a lot of people who were talking about it before you could find somebody who was like doing it or willing to like actually.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. So Steve gives Noah wine, and he kind of jokes and is like, haha, don't worry, I won't drug you again. Which, like, that he's like very good at being like, this dramatic thing I did to you, it was really just a lighthearted fun time, remember?
Right, and it's no big deal, and you shouldn't hold it against me. Look at my face. Look at my cute face.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then he says, I think she says, like, who is buying this? And he says, it's the 1% of the 1%. They want the one thing that nobody else has. And she asks if it's only women that eat. And he says that's where the market is and that women taste better, which that's like such a good example of weird sexist things where it's like, I would never eat a man, or like, men are gross, but that's why I have to abuse women.
Right, men are gross. That's why I have to abuse women. That's such a yeah. But yeah, no, totally. And I think that it's never really in some of the like flashes to different people opening and eating the meat, it's like seen kind of fetishy, but like overall the movie doesn't really like touch that part of it that much. And I do think that's like a moment where you kind of get that implied sexual element of it, because
right,
why does it have to be women? Like, give me a
and
real
that
reason.
they ship like their bras and panties with the meat too. That feels very sexualizing.
Right. He doesn't seem to have like his
I don't think Steve is.
Right. Like, he doesn't seem like it's very sexual for him. For him, he seems like it's weird. He's like a foodie as he's interacting with it, which is interesting. But he definitely knows and is catering to that piece of it. Which is interesting, because I you would almost think that with his interaction with it as like this delicacy that is like so delicious and amazing, that you would almost think that like he wouldn't want it to be degraded in that way, but obviously he doesn't really give a shit. Like, I think that kind of pokes holes in his bullshit, but it is kind of interesting.
And I noticed on this watch that I hadn't noticed the first time, that I think while they're eating it is when they flash to more of like seeing the men who've bought the meat, and one of them has this satanic goat symbol, and that same symbol is outside of the murder house one of the times when Steve is like cutting wood or something. So I think there is some sort of satanic element to the human flesh sacrifice or eating.
Yeah. Well, and it also kind of makes you wonder, like, is there really, or is that just part of the fantasy of the whole thing?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. A lot of open-ended. I would really like to see a prequel or just like a side story of this like world that they set up, because and the movie is great without the information. I think that honestly it would have been too much if it had been like totally explained in the movie, because that's just not what it was really about. But it just makes it really makes me so curious about the dynamics of this weird meat underworld.
Yeah. Then after Noah asks if it's her, she asks who is it, like, and he says her name's Hope, and they kind of like laugh and joke about her name being Hope, and I think Noah says that she tastes more like joy, and then they're like smiling together. She's kind of like playing into his fantasy, and he says, you know how I knew you were special, because you're fucked up too. And then I think after
which is I was just gonna say, and that does feel, it feels like such a man thing to say.
Yeah.
I don't know, like that seems like something that a really shitty guy would say as a means of like justifying a toxic relationship that he's a part of, right? Of like, of course this makes sense because you're fucked up too. Like I'm fucked up and you're fucked up and we're fucked up together, right? Like it's just like
it feels so like high school to me also.
Yeah, totally.
Then Noah goes back to her room. Not goes back. She's locked back in her room.
Yeah.
And then she throws up the human meat, and like she did a good job of playing it like it was fine. And then when she's alone, she's like, ugh, get this out of me. And we see Steve throw Molly over his shoulder and bring her, I think, to surgery at that point. And Penny talks to Noah, and I think this is the first time that I actually started trusting Penny, because I kind of thought she was a mole at first.
Ooh, that would have been an interesting turn of events.
Yeah. And then Noah and Penny agree that there's somebody new in there, but they like Noah doesn't know that it's Molly, which is like really fucked up.
Yeah. Although I don't know, would you recognize my blood curdling screams if I wasn't just talking?
No, not. I don't mean it's fucked up that she doesn't know it's her. I mean, well, like I do mean that, but not in the way that you're saying. Not that she like doesn't recognize her screams.
Okay.
Just
I was like, what?
No, I just mean it's fucked up that like she thinks her friend is like safe at home, but she's in the same situation as her.
Yeah, that's in there.
And then and I think maybe this is when I trusted Penny for the first time, because right after this we get a top-down view of Penny and she's missing a leg. Although the wife is also missing a leg, so, and she's not trustworthy.
That's true. But she's also not like locked in a room.
Right.
Yeah. And I do think it just kind of solidifies the situation of like, this only goes further from here.
Yeah. Then Steve brings Noah a pink dress and says she should wear it tonight and they'll have dinner again. And he says, I'll pick you up at 7, and is like still just like trying to make things seem normal, which is
and she's like,
so
I have
weird.
no idea what time it is.
Yeah, right.
Which I thought was funny. Like, I thought it was funny that they had that interaction. And she's like, I have no idea what time it is. And he's like, I know.
Yeah. And then I think he gives her some makeup too, because she is like putting on makeup and in the mirror. And then he leaves his wedding ring off and is ignoring his wife's calls. And Noah's practicing smiling in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I wrote in my notes, I think this is my thoughts and not like something that was said, but I'm not positive. But we earn safety through compliance and playing along and being polite when somebody comes on to us. Like there's a lot of times where you like have to be nice to somebody scary to make it be a less scary situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially like as a woman with men.
Yeah. And I think that's something that then gets shamed, right? Of like, well, why didn't you just like turn him down? Why didn't you just like tell him to go away? Why didn't you just tell him to stop talking to you? And it's like, because I don't know what he's gonna do if I say that. Right. You know, like, you know, 3 out of 4 people are gonna maybe say like a mean comment and then walk away, but like there's always gonna be the one person who's gonna turn it into something really much bigger. And you don't know who that person's gonna be, because sometimes they look like Steve and they're a plastic surgeon with like a nice house and who's taking you on vacation. You know, like it's not like there's a look.
Yeah. And I think like it's become kind of commonplace to like joke when you're going on a date with somebody you meet online. Like, I hope they aren't a serial killer.
I feel like I'm not joking when I I'm not. Yeah, like
really terrifying. I mean, yeah, it like is and isn't a joke.
Yeah, I mean, because if I go on and it's funny because it is different if I go on a date with a man versus someone who is not a man.
Yeah.
That I will react like or not react, but like I will kind of set it up differently. I mean, I will always like send a picture of somebody and be like, this is who I'm going on a date with, this is where we're going, whatever. But I'm like, if I'm on a date with a man, I'm like, my location is staying on. If my phone turns off, you should be scared. Like, I'm like, you know, like this
right.
Is, you know, it's definitely, it's like a joke, but it's like not a joke.
Yeah.
Because they also don't have to be a serial killer. You know what I mean? Like, so
like, other scary things.
Right. And I think that's the thing. Like, we say serial killer as a stand-in for like everything, I think, and that's what the joke is. But like, the reality is just like any number of terrible things can happen to you just for going on a date with a man.
Yep. So they're sitting down to eat again. Noah says, "Is this a date?" And he says, "Maybe it is." She chugs a glass of wine. He says, "This is going to be an interesting night." He gives her pate, which is liver. I find all pate really disgusting, but I feel like human pate would be especially gross.
Yeah.
And then he says that she can make it next time. Oh yeah, and then this is how we find out Melissa's dead, I guess. Although I guess she wouldn't have to be dead, but they're eating, and she says, "Who is this?" And he says, "This is Melissa." And you see like a brief moment of her face like recognizing who that is, and then she goes back to her mask and she says, "That's so boring, isn't it? She tastes decadent. I thought you were..." Oh, this is when she says joy. And then she asks if they finished all of the hope, and he says, "No, there's more hope left." The joking around the names is like pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I was definitely also like, when she said the thing about Joy, because that's my middle name, I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Don't drag me in this.
Right. And then he opens the painting that she saw when she first went there, and behind it there's like a bunch of cubbies and it has pictures of the girls and all their stuff, and there's a stack of cell phones, and she says, "Where's my stuff?" And he says, "With me, I guess." And then they return to the table, and then they have breast meat, and she laughs and says, "You saved the breast for last." And I think he's just like, she's trying to throw him off the whole time. But also, like, I feel like breast is just like fatty tissue and like wouldn't taste good. I don't know that. I mean, I guess is, I think for him it is still like a foodie thing. I guess I find liver gross also. So I don't know. Not every body part's for everyone, but that feels sort of sexualizing to me also, even though they don't like talk about it that way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then she starts crying.
That one is gross looking though, like on the plate.
Right. It does look like breast tissue though.
Yeah, like I don't like pate, but like it doesn't look disgusting to me. You know what I mean? Like, but that like looked real. I remember being like, that's
yeah.
so gross.
She's crying. She apologizes. She says it's really nice. It's just all confusing. And she says she feels awful because she doesn't feel awful. And he's like, "It's okay. You're just different. I knew it from the moment I met you." And then he's like, "Haha, I forgot to handcuff you." And then, which is like a good sign that like what she's doing is kind of working on him. And she's like, okay. And then they have like maybe one of my favorite scenes that's like so awkward but so good, where they have this like elaborate dance scene.
Yeah.
And they're like looking in each other's eyes. They look like pretty directly at the camera a couple times, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
There's like slowly raising their hands together. It's just like a very intimate, serious, but also silly dance. It's just like, I remember being like, what the fuck is happening when I first watched it? And the second time I was like, this is good.
Yeah, because it's definitely one of those scenes where if it was like plucked out and put somewhere else, it would be really sweet.
Yeah.
You know, like the kind of silly, kind of seriousness of it is almost the thing that would make it sweet in a different movie. But obviously in this movie, it's disturbing.
Yep. And then they're like, they go to his bedroom and they're like, it seems like they're going to have sex. And she goes into the bathroom. I think she's like, "Let me make myself more comfortable," or something like that. And she comes back and she goes down on him and she bites his dick off and then rubs toothpaste in his eyes. I was like, wow, that's so smart. The toothpaste part, especially.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. Sorry, what?
Instead of very iconic attack.
Yes. And then she locks him in, and then now's the escape scene. She finds Penny, she finds Molly. She's like, "Holy shit, Molly, why are you here?" And we know Molly had surgery, but we don't really find out where she had bits removed from. And then they like don't know how to, we do? Where?
Yeah, she had her boob cut off. Yeah, she had her boob cut off.
Oh. And then they can't figure out how to get up the stairs with legless Penny, and they find like a meat elevator thing. What is that called? The tiny elevators?
A dumbwaiter.
Yes.
It's a weird name though.
Yeah. Steve is like losing his shit. They put Penny in the dumbwaiter. Noah and Molly are like fighting in the kitchen. Penny like pops up the dumbwaiter and like kicks him in the face, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The meat tenderizer is on the counter the whole time. I was like, "Get the meat tenderizer, hit him."
Yeah.
Molly gets hit and I think knocked out. He tries to strangle Noah, and then Penny stabs his leg. He tries to stab Penny. Noah bites him. Molly kicks him. They're all just like kind of out of it, and like everybody's been beaten up. And I think they like knock him out finally, and they get the cell phones. And at this point, the bartender drives up to the house, and he says, "This shit is creepy as fuck." And
yeah.
He gets out of the car, he hears screaming and a gunfire, and he says, "Fuck this shit, I know how this story plays out," and he leaves, which I was like, yeah, that's fair.
That's fair. I think if I were him, I probably would have like anonymously called the police though.
Yeah, I think that would have been my move also.
Yeah.
And then Steve's screaming at Noah, like, "You lied to me." And then they're just like kind of running in the woods, all fighting. The girls are trying to get away. The delivery man that we saw earlier and the wife show up, and the wife sees blood and a knife and says, "Get a flashlight." She hears his phone and she finds it in the box where he left his ring, and she's just kind of like, "This motherfucker." But she seems kind of more upset that he's like disrupting their lifestyle than disrupting their relationship. I don't know. Maybe that was just me reading into it, but that was the impression I got.
Yeah, I was thinking similar. No, I was thinking the same thing, kind of like, I mean, it seems like the love between them is pretty much not there. You know, you don't like see them, like, I don't know, they don't seem like a happy couple, and it does seem like at a certain point, maybe she's just kind of in it for the security and in it for the lifestyle that, you know, that much money can give. And she's like, "You fucked this up for me, for us, whatever."
Yeah. And then Steve, while he's like chasing after them, says, "Stupid, weak, pussy ass fucking bitches." You know, it's like, that's kind of like a weird insult for like, okay. And Molly really runs out and yeah, they're hiding in the trees. Molly runs out and says, "Hey, you fucking half dick." And they're like tearing him apart. And one of them says, "Come on, give me a smile," and then shoots him in the face. And like this whole thing is interspersed with another montage of the men eating the meat. And then they have the phones, but there's no service. And then I think Noah realized she dropped the phone back by the house, and they don't know that the wife is there. I think they still have another phone, but she's like, "I forgot my phone." And I was like, "Don't you have the cloud? Just leave it. You don't need it. Don't go back there."
Right. Even if you don't have the cloud, is it worth it?
Right. The wife finds him, and she looks like sort of sad, but also relieved. And she says to the delivery guy, "We're going to need to clean this up, get his body all nice." And I was kind of wondering if they were going to try to sell his meat at that point, even though they said they only eat women. But like, if you were someone receiving it, it's not like you would really know that it wasn't a woman's meat if they like send you a lady's picture or something.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Then Noah's looking for a phone in the woods. She turns around, finds the wife. The wife like pretends she's sad and says, "Oh my god, you got him." And then she tries to strangle Noah. Noah stabs her in the neck with the keys, and then Molly hits her in the head with a shovel and says, "I asked you for help, bitches like you are the fucking problem." And then somebody else, maybe Penny, says he's married, question mark.
Yeah.
And which is like, I think I would be surprised to find that out. I guess I was when it happened. And Noah says, "I fucking love you, Molly." And Molly says, "I love you more." And then Heads Will Roll plays, which is such a good song. And then I think Noah finally gets service, and she gets a text from the guy Chad from the beginning at the Chinese restaurant, and says, "You up?" Classic.
Yeah, she gets a "you up" on her way out of this like nightmare situation, which is just accurate. True to life. Very true to life.
Yep. But yeah, that's fresh. It's good. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I want to watch it again now. I thought all the actors were really good. We talked more in the first part about all of the orange and red tones, and then like when they're getting out, it is nighttime, but it's more like it's not shot in black and white, but it almost looks black and white because of the tones of it being dark and then the light for filming.
And it's just such a like it's such a like lush environment outside too. You know what I mean? Like they're really like escaping into like an abundance of light.
Yeah, especially after they were held in like sort of concrete rooms. Like there was like colors and carpeting, but the stairs were all concrete and the walls were concrete.
Yeah, but I really liked this movie too. I mean, I love cannibalism movies. I think that they are always really interesting, and like I think there's always some interesting layers to pick at in cannibalism movies, and they're not always the same layers, you know what I mean? Like think about like the conversation we're having today versus the one we had in the episode about like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know what I mean? They're both cannibalism movies, but they're like totally different. There's just so much. I think there's so much to explore around that as like a horror concept.
Yeah, and especially like this one was like cannibalism in dating and like just male consumption of women.
Yeah, totally.